Hello, everyone. So, Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011, and Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. When Saturn moved into Pisces, this materialized a lot of Neptunian chthonic fears hidden in our subconscious, fears and insecurities related the to whatever house in your chart that Pisces occupies. I'm going to talk about Saturn and Neptune, their conjunction, how they act in the birth chart, and how you can best mediate them. And I'm going to read a bit about the Neptune and Saturn cycles in history and just in general, and then go through each of the rising signs to just talk about how Neptune and Saturn moving through their house of Pisces has affected them, and how the Neptune-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees Aries might affect them as well. So let's jump right into it. Saturn, or Kronos, he is the god of time. And what time does is it creates these bounds and limitations that allow potentiality to take form. So instead of everything happening all at once, or things coming into form that aren't well thought out and they're half baked, or, just with a lot of sloppy imperfections, Saturn wants things to be slowed down so that they can be well thought out. And so genuine skill and mastery can be acquired. So if you think about the myth, he cuts off the phallus of Uranus, and that is because Uranus is and this video isn't about Uranus, but Uranus is about fertility in a lot of ways, because it's progressive. It's you can see with Uranus, some of the children in the myth that he had with Gaia were kind of chaotic. He had kids with 100 hands. He fathered cyclopses, stuff like that. And in fact, he was scared of some of his children, and I think that's a good example of that potentiality coming into form without being well thought out, without the forms being perfected. So Saturn is also and also just, you can't have endless multiplicity. You can't have things just coming into form like bing, 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 bing. That would be way too much. Like there does need to be some sort of limitations. Alright, and so Saturn is also associated with older men or older people in general, with fathers, your father, authority figures, institutions, um, agriculture. In your own chart, um, Saturn, rules over Capricorn. So wherever Capricorn is in your chart is going to be a place where you feel like a lot of responsibility towards that area in your life, and you will feel a lot of seriousness towards it. Like it's a place where you feel, yeah, like you have to be responsible in that area and you have to take it seriously. Sometimes people will take that area of their life too seriously. And then wherever Saturn is in your chart, that's going to be a place where you have to build up that area of your life. You have to take the Saturnian steps and the Saturnian effort, which is, that slow building and consistency to build up that area in your life. It's usually going to be a place that feels withheld from you, and that can be quite difficult. But it's also going to be a place where you have to take the responsibility yourself. You're probably not going to get help in that area. But, if you can gain mastery in that area, you can gain long-term, consistent rewards from that. I like thinking about it like dopamine, right? Like if you are dopamine maxing and stacking just like a bunch of dopamine things, like, I'm gonna drink alcohol and smoke weed and eat really greasy fat foods and doom scroll and play video games. Like those are all things that will give you strong hits of dopamine, like very quickly. So they are, I don't know, I can't think of it right now, but either way, so your dopamine will spike and then you'll crash, and you can become very dysregulated that way. But on the other hand, there are ways to grow your dopamine where where you will get a, not as high of a spike, but, a spike that like stays steady and consistent for a while. And usually those types of spikes come from actually being consistent and putting in hard, serious work every day. Achieving long-term goals. And then, so that's Saturn. And now Neptune. Neptune is the planet associated with the subconscious. It's, associated with water, right? And water is so influenced by the moon, and the moon holds memory and it holds karma. And the subconscious is quite complex, but really, Neptune is the planet of dreams, of fog, cloudiness. It dissolves. It's um, the planet of um, unconditional love. I couldn't think of the word unconditional for way too long there, but unconditional love. And so it's also associated with the world soul. Um, but it's this place where, you know, we can put on these unconditional love lenses and idealize things and situations, um, and ignore red flags. And it can be a place where we feel confusion or that there can be leaks, but it's also a place where a symbolic place, um, a somatic place. So, in your own chart, um, wherever your 12th house is, that's going to represent your subconscious to a degree and your connection to um, the world soul. And wherever Neptune is in your chart, that is going to be a place where you might overextend yourself. You might be too giving. Um, and you can notice that, like, you know, Neptune can also, like, blur boundaries where, because it's this connection to the world soul, really what it is, it's a raw openness of your own soul. And so if you are um, in a relationship or just around other dealing with other people in that area of your life where your Neptune is, it can be a place where you struggle to establish boundaries. Um, and if you are too selfless and giving in those areas, you're going to find that those areas of your life are leaking. Um, so, you can mediate that by incorporating mysticism in that area or just having strong boundaries. But, as you can tell, right, if Saturn is structure and Neptune is um, dissolution, then when they come together, it can be um, a situation where structures dissolve. So in the past, a lot of times these Neptune Saturn conjunctions do come with structures dissolving. There have been a lot of revolutions during Neptune Saturn conjunctions. The French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the American Revolution, and even the Great Depression, which is kind of a dissolving of a financial system. So this conjunction is quite significant. And another thing that it can do is bring up those chthonic fears. Um, the moon is more complicated than we probably give it credit for. Um, it is associated with memory and karma, right? Your mother, your ancestral roots in a way. And it can be this place where, since the north and the south node belong to the moon, that is the north and the south node are strongly associated with chaos, and there is this element to that is chthonic, nightmarish, dissolving, anti-intelligence, so psych, fragmenting. And a lot of this stuff comes up out of your subconscious. So when Saturn, comes along and comes into that subconscious planet, you can have some of those fears materialize in your life because Saturn brings structure. And so, you may have found that a lot of fears came up, or that you had to face a lot of those kind of subconscious fears in the last couple of years. I wanted to read a little bit of Richard Tarnas, Cosmos and Psyche. If you haven't read Richard Tarnas or looked into him, and you're into astrology, or you're into like Carl Jung, or metaphysics, philosophy, any of it, like, you should really look into Richard Tarnas. He is great. He wrote Cosmos and Psyche, and he also wrote Passion of the Western Mind. So this is astrology based, kind of talking about how he didn't used to believe in astrology, and then, he started believing in it, and this is an incredible book. Goes through a lot, but he goes through a lot of the outer planet transits, and he writes a bit about the Saturn and Neptune conjunctions or cycles. So I will just jump into that. So this is page 470 in Cosmos and Psyche if you're interested. He says, a characteristic motif of Saturn-Neptune eras is a heightened tension and a dialectic between ideals, hopes, and beliefs on the one hand and the hard realities of life on the other. The same complex can express itself in the form of heightened conflicts between religion and secularism, belief and facts, faith-based and reality-based, and in the United States, red states and blue states, each side perceiving the other to be living in a state of delusional self-deception. Intensified secular skepticism towards religious beliefs of any kind tends to be constellated at the same time as intensified commitment to conservative religiosity, which often takes the form of anti-scientific biblical literalism, God versus science. The conflict between creationism and evolution is a characteristic expression of this archetypal polarity, as in the case of the Scopes trial during the Saturn-Neptune square of 1925, and of Darwin himself, born during the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of 1809. Sensitivity to the oppressive and constraining aspects of religious belief tends to be heightened, bringing forth sharp criticism of religion as mere myth, superstitious nonsense, naive fantasy, and the opium of the people. In the words of Marx, born during the Saturn-Neptune square that followed Darwin's conjunction, a psychologically motivated illusion in the view of Freud, born during the Saturn-Neptune square exactly one cycle later, issues surrounding skepticism generally, the discernment of truth and illusion, and the confronting of deception and delusion frequently emerge. There is also a tendency during Saturn-Neptune eras to experience a subtle but pervasive darkening of the collective consciousness, sometimes as a diffuse and difficult to diagnose social malaise, at other times as a direct response to deeply discouraging or tragic events. Reflecting the complex in its most intense form, such eras are frequently marked by collective experiences of tragic loss, the defeat of ideals and aspirations, the death of a dream, which are accompanied by a sense of profound sorrow. The current Saturn-Neptune opposition reached the 15-degree range in November 2004. He wrote this in I thought 2002. Um, oh, okay. So this says it was published in 2006. So I guess, um, yeah, he must have been writing this part in 2004. The bitter disappointment and vast sadness that overcame half the U.S. population and much of the rest of the world as a result of Bush's re-election, just as the alignment reached the 15-degree threshold, is highly characteristic of the Saturn-Neptune complex. The pervading sense that an ideal had been lost took many forms: the loss of the ideal image of what the United States had once represented, both to its citizens and to the world, the defeat of widespread hopes for a change in the world's leadership at a critical time in history, the sense of futility felt after so much work on behalf of that cause, the loss of faith in the democratic process, lingering doubts about the truthfulness of the vote count and the legitimacy of the election. This has been taking place in the United States fourth house, me as well, and I'll talk about that too because that's been significant. You can see that, the fourth house is the foundation, it's the home, and you can see there are all of these themes about election integrity, right? That's the foundation of our democratic process. Um, these immigration fears, like a lot of, I mean, you can see all of this stuff happening where there's a lot of concern of like illegal immigration and like a push to close the border and um, you know a lot of Trump's policies have centered around immigration and restricting that or building a wall. So you can see some heavy fourth house Saturn Neptune themes currently in the United States. Okay. Yes. Highly characteristic of the Saturn-Neptune complex was the pervasive experience of discouragement and depression, resignation, pessimism, despair, and dazed disorientation that descended on many in the following weeks and months like an immense dark cloud. The same complex was visible even more acutely 1 month later in the wake of the tsunami in Asia, with its tidal wave of grief, inconsolable loss, and anguish, and mass rituals of mourning. Here, too, were the other characteristic Saturn-Neptune themes: death caused by water, the ocean as source of suffering and loss, contamination of water, waterborne and infectious diseases, numberless haunting images of death and sorrow transmitted throughout the world and permeating the collective consciousness. As the Saturn-Neptune alignment moved closer in orb in the late summer of 2005, virtually all of these themes dramatically repeated themselves in the catastrophic flooding that overwhelmed New Orleans after the Gulf Coast Hurricane Katrina. Many characteristic motifs of the Saturn-Neptune complex pervaded the event and its aftermath: death and disaster through water, the floodwaters breaching the protective levees, the stream of globally televised images of suffering and death, the drowning of a city and legacy that represented the soul of much of American culture, floating corpses, the contaminated and diseased water, the widespread dehydration, the lack of critical drugs, the countless medical crises, the powerless hospitals and nursing homes, the strange paralysis of the government, the collective sense of hopelessness and despair, the steady focus on the suffering of the poor, the abandoned, the sick and the frail, the very old and very young, the dying, the homeless, the grieving. A comparison of the central crisis of the two consecutive Saturn oppositions, first with Pluto, then Neptune, that have marked this first decade of the 21st century is instructive. The fiery hell and ashes of Ground Zero in New York on September 11th, followed by the shock and awe destruction of the Iraq invasion during the Saturn-Pluto alignment, stand in sharp contrast with the tragic water nightmares of the Asian tsunami and the New Orleans flood during the Saturn-Neptune alignment. The difference in the collective emotional responses of the two crises is striking as well. The intensified power struggle, conservative empowerment, grave determination, armored security, and mutually demonizing hostility during the Saturn-Pluto alignment, compared with the widespread sense of diffuse helplessness, disillusionment, and despair, bitter disappointment with the government's massive failure and negligence, and private outpouring of compassion, prayer, sacrifice, and aid during the Saturn-Neptune alignment. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. But he talks a little bit about the Gulf War, which was around the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 1987 and 91. And then he talks about during the Saturn-Neptune opposition in 2004 to 2005, there was a methamphetamine epidemic, right? I would say that we have a pretty bad fentanyl epidemic currently. At least that's what they say. I don't know. I haven't actually looked at the statistics, but seems like it. Probably. Yet the same archetypal complex also tends to constellate a strong impulse to unmask deception, to reveal the illusion, to cut through the denial, to confront the dark reality behind the surface image. Credibility gaps arise. A sharper eye for shadow tends to develop in the collective cultural vision, resulting in a more acute sense of irony, sometimes bitter irony, as with Jonathan Swift and Mark Twain, both born with Saturn and Neptune in hard aspect. With increased tendencies towards ironic distancing and intensified skepticism about political rhetoric, conventional wisdom, naivety, hypocrisy and deceit. The sharply increased public recognition in 2004 to 5 of the Bush administration's systematic deception in the beginning of the Iraq War, its false claims concerning Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, and terrorist links to September 11th, which paralleled current revelations and skepticism about athletes and drugs, the pharmaceutical industry, journalists' hoax in major news media, and the Bush administration's deceptive editing of scientific reports about global warming and other environmental matters is highly characteristic of the Saturn-Neptune pattern of truth and illusion, deception and unmasking deception. Underlying uniting many of the above tendencies is the central theme of disenchantment and disillusionment in both the negative and positive senses, and encompassing the entire range of their meanings. These include not only loss of faith, discouragement, social alienation, and sense of existential meaninglessness, but also the empowerment that can emerge from confronting an illusion, shedding a faith that is no longer viable, waking as if from a dream, lucidly recognizing the consensus madness, demystifying the received version of reality, as in the collective disillusionment with communism that rapidly spread through the peoples of Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union during the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of 1987 to 91, and the triple conjunction with Uranus. A subtle dissolving of oppressive structures can take place on many levels, affecting structures of belief as well as of institutions. Yet another important form of this motif can take is the dichotomy between materialistic reductionism, Saturn, and the imaginative vision, Neptune, between matter and spirit, and between cosmic disenchantment and an ensouled universe. Here the characteristic Saturn-Neptune issue of judging what is truth and what is illusion becomes especially relevant, as each side views the other captured by an illusion. The possibility that modern disenchantment in Weber's sense is itself at a deeper level of form of delusional enchantment, a self-enclosed state of alienated consciousness that has systematically filtered out the spiritual dimensions of existence, offers yet a further amplification of these characteristic Saturn-Neptune themes. Weber himself, the great theorist of disenchantment, was born during the Saturn-Neptune opposition of 1864, and he articulated the concept of disenchantment in his lecture Science as a Vocation during the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 1919. Skipping forward. Saturn-Neptune periods tend to be among the most psychologically and spiritually demanding of times, as well as the most likely to call forth genuine nobility of spirit and profundity of vision. They can engender a darker cast to the imagination, yet also a more realistic spirituality. In perhaps its most admirable form, the Saturn-Neptune complex appears to be associated with the courage to face a hard and often tragic reality without illusion, and still remain true to the ideals and dreams of a better world. Instead of provoking despair or passivity, the painful gap between the ideal and the real inspires one to undertake whatever sustained labor is necessary to transform the resistant structures of the world, political, economic, religious, philosophical, in service of one's highest spiritual institutions. And he says a lot more about the Neptune-Saturn cycles, but we're going to leave it there because I think that's a good summary. And really, if you want to read more, if you want to know more, you should just get the book. So now, let's go through the rising signs and talk about how it has affected each individually and the type of fears that and like fears and insecurities that have come along with these transits, and um, what the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries might bring each of the rising signs, um, what kind of ways your fears, your Neptunian fears, may have materialized. Um, and let's understand some of what's been happening in our lives the past couple of years and where we're headed. Pisces rising. This is occurring in your first house. So, with this in your first house, you may have felt fears of losing yourself, having a blurry or foggy identity, feeling misunderstood or invisible, um, anxiety around boundaries blurring between you and others, you and other people's needs. Um, Saturn adds pressure here that looks like, others scrutinizing you for not being clear enough, not having a stable form, a stable direction. Um, you might have felt almost naked, like people could see through you or see your flaws, um, but probably not. Um, you were probably cloudy more than anything. Um, but there is just that openness. You might have felt like you were at the whims of the collective consciousness. You might have feared that your life may never actualize into what you dream. There might have been a higher sensitivity to sensory input, a general sense of fatigue, overwhelm, or heaviness, a fear of seeing yourself, being afraid to look into yourself. Your subconscious is right there in such a prominent part of your life, and the subconscious has a lot of fears that pop up, and so it can be scary to look at those things, especially when it's so tied to your identity and it's how you interact with the world. A dissolving or restructuring of your dreams or your identity. There might have been scenarios that Saturn manifested where people misunderstood you, or you felt like you had no sense of direction, or anytime you took a step, like you would just feel confusion, like you were just unsure and you couldn't see a clear path forward. But when Neptune and Aries move into your second house, your thinking is going to change from who am I to what do I believe that I deserve. So you'll form a more grounded, authentic sense of value. You might realize that your beliefs about your worth were illusions. You may spiritualize abundance and virtue, really give meaning to what abundance means to you. You may let go of old financial habits, recognize where you overgive financially, and learn to set some boundaries there. You may monetize a dream or get some material value out of a dream. But most importantly, you will begin to build a new value system, a new sense of security, and a renewed relationship with self-respect. So, yeah, you are in a not a cocoon. You're in a dissolving stage, but you're a phoenix rising from the ashes. I don't know, that's more platonic, but your bricks will show up and you'll start building. So look forward to February. I think that it'll definitely feel good for you to have Saturn and Neptune out of your first house. Aquarius rising. This is happening in your second house, and your second house is your finances, your assets, your material belongings, your value system, your self-esteem. So with Neptune and Saturn moving through this house, you might have felt like your self-worth and your finances were leaking and you were struggling to block that leakage. You might have experienced insecurities around your ability to provide stability for yourself, felt not good enough to earn what you want. You might have been really giving and receiving little in return. You might have felt like an imposter or like you didn't have anything solid to hold on to. Saturn may have come in and materialized some of these fears. You might have had to really start budgeting. Maybe someone owed you money and you had to assert boundaries. You might have been being taken advantage of financially and been forced to assert your self-worth. You might have had to seek out a new job or new skills, develop a new long-term plan. You might have had to negotiate a raise at work. But when you might have also felt like your values or your morals were cloudy, maybe a sense of moral ambiguity where you're too empathetic or too forgiving of others, or like struggling to decipher what is considered too bad or something like that. But when Saturn and Neptune move into your third house, you'll experience a rebirth of your thinking, your perception, the way that you express yourself, how you communicate, how you learn. You may feel more clear-minded, more decisive. You could uncover old mental conditioning, roots of your self-doubt, ways that you hide your thoughts. You may learn to speak more assertively and let go of passive patterns, or just more poetically, you may feel that you find your voice. So, if this feels accurate for you, know that you are nearing the end of this cycle and that third house rebirth is coming soon in February. So maybe by now you already feel like you have a better hold on your finances and feel more restructured in your self-esteem. And yeah, good luck with your new stage starting in February. Capricorn rising. This is happening in your third house of communication, your perception, your thought patterns, short distance travel, siblings, cousins, aunts and uncles. You may have felt like your words just weren't coming across like you wanted them to. You might have been second guessing your thoughts a lot or feeling mentally foggy. Might have had a lot of anxiety or worries around saying the wrong thing. You might have felt suspicious over communication, like feeling suspicious of vagueness or worrying that others aren't being honest, feeling gaslit or fearing being gaslit, feeling overwhelmed by too much information, just scattered, unfocused, like your thoughts are chaotic. You might have worried about your siblings. And Saturn might have manifested these fears as like instances where there are texting mistakes or miscommunications, technology issues that disrupt communication. You might have had external pressure at times to communicate clearly when you were feeling confused, and that can exacerbate some of those fears of like you're not smart enough, or you're not clear enough in your brain to communicate clearly and well and the way that you want to. You might have been extra quiet or felt like communication was a lot of work, or that you needed a lot of solitude to think through things. But, sorry, when Saturn and Neptune move into Aries in your fourth house, you might find that your confidence emerges from a period of being lost in your thoughts and fears. You may end up redefining a living situation. You may move or renovate your home. cut ties with toxic family members or heal childhood wounds. Um, really create emotional independence and build a solid a solid, I guess, feeling of your home and what is home. So, good luck, Taurus rising. Um, your mental clarity will be returning to you soon. And good luck on your next journey with Aries and Saturn and Neptune in your fourth house, which will start in February. Sag risings. So, I'm a Sag rising, and this was a hard one in the fourth house. Um, the fourth house is the house of home, family, your emotional foundations, your patterns from childhood, subconscious patterns or habits, your private self. This is an incredibly subconscious and karmic transit because it deals with your ancestral line and what we inherit. And it's where some of our deepest fears hide. You know, our fears from childhood. And I guess I could talk about a little bit of how it manifested for me. Um, since this is in the fourth house, it can manifest as like vivid dreams, so you may have had some vivid dreams. For me, I remember I was graduating college and moving into a new city, and I was having nightmares almost every night of moving into a new home and it being like really old and dark and having a poor foundation and falling through the floor into a black nothingness. And I don't know, it felt so cold, just like an intense fear of not having a safe place and not having a foundation. And even when I moved into my new place, things kept happening that just made me feel unsafe. Like, in the middle of the night, my window kept falling in, and so I felt like I couldn't count on my, um, I guess, like, things staying closed and protected, and a lot of my childhood wounds came up. You know, I won't go into that too deeply, but a lot of nightmares, a lot of feeling almost haunted by my ancestors, feeling very unsupported, um, not having a support system, feeling like I was just moving from place to place, having no home, like I was living in one just like long liminal space. And I still feel that way. Uh, all of my stuff is still packed up. My stuff has been packed up for, I don't know, 8 months now. So, yeah, I've moved quite a few times. Um, but, um, you know, I think it has forced me to develop a sense of home in myself. I've definitely healed a lot of childhood wounds and stuff like that. But enough about me, enough about my story, how it manifested for me. Um, so, anyway, in general, uh, you may feel like you don't have emotional security or a safe place, that you may not be able to rely on having a home, like a secure place to root yourself, or like you may not be able to rely on your family. You may feel insecure in your ability to provide for yourself emotional stability. You may feel emotionally alone or unsupported by your family, disconnected from a support system, feeling like loved ones may dissolve from your life, a fear of becoming like your parents or repeating their mistakes, feeling like you inherited a family curse or pattern that you can't escape. Feeling like your home is unsafe. Um, Saturn could materialize Neptunian themes of like water damage or mold, flooding, infestations. Um, there might have been confusion about your living situation or feeling like your living space is heavy or foggy. Where I'm living now, I didn't sign a lease. Never signed a lease. It's a little weird. It's a just interesting manifestation of it. Um, Issues may arise in your living situation that become unavoidable, like maybe your water heater breaks, or you get a giant hole in your window, or yeah, like if your house floods or you have an infestation, right? You can't avoid fixing those things. And so it forces you to like take those Saturnian steps to resolve those issues. Um, this transit can bring a lot of emotional overwhelm, bring up old trauma, childhood memories, past abandonment, or heartbreak related fears. It's a very raw and nostalgic, just a desperate longing for comfort and connection, but also just needing a lot of withdrawal, just a lot of time to be alone with your emotions and sort them out, and also just feeling very tired and fatigued. Um, you may feel like your childhood patterns are repeating themselves, but when Saturn and Neptune move into your fifth house, you may experience a stronger connection to a healed inner child, a surge of creativity, of self-confidence, joy, a desire to express your identity, a stronger sense of courage, a feeling that you're coming back to life, a desire to assert yourself and protect your inner child. You may start a new creative project, a new romantic relationship, discover a new talent, or just feel like you deserve to express yourself, to express your needs directly, to release guilt around pleasure, to allow yourself to play again. In the simplest terms, one karmic cycle ends and a new one begins. So, yep, I feel you, Sag Risings. I feel you. But, you know, it's been 2 years now, and it's been hard, but I think we all feel ourselves coming out of it, and you know, it helps to understand what was going on and to be able to reflect on it and to know, you know, what's coming. I have gotten a lot closer to my inner child. I hope that you have too. It's a beautiful thing, and good luck in February, Sag. It's gonna be great. Scorpio rising. This is happening in your fifth house of romance, creativity, joy, self-expression, your inner child. This may bring up feelings of insecurity in love, feeling like you're not good enough for your partner, or they don't want you as much as you want them, that you are getting tricked or may get tricked by someone or love someone who ends up disappointing you, that you may be too much or too needy in a relationship. You may fear being the center of attention, or that your creations aren't good enough or you're not talented enough. Saturn can turn this into perfectionist tendencies. It may take you longer to get your creations out because you're just thinking that they're never good enough, and it could really stall your expression and your progress. And if you're a creator, I mean, it can really stunt your growth if you are being too much of a perfectionist of your work. You may question whether you will ever feel joy again, or feel like Saturn is flattening your joy and Neptune is creating fog around what joy even is. You may experience a romantic disappointment that forces clarity, a creative block that forces discipline. or, just being forced to grow up in love and to take dating more seriously. You may experience sudden bursts of creative expression. You might have a lot of dreamy fantasies or feel like you're lost in dreamy fantasies and idealizing people or situations. You might have a strong desire to protect your inner child, and a fear of being judged. But when Neptune and Saturn move into your fifth house, you'll start to feel a responsibility more so around maintaining your environment, your physical and your mental health. You may break unhealthy habits, start a new fitness routine, focus on eating well, develop a new daily routine in general or daily habits. You could start a new job, sixth house, maybe something health related or service related. You may become more disciplined in your creative expression that felt foggy or blocked before. More organized and consistent, having a set schedule for your creating, setting measurable goals and deadlines for your creations. Simply put, your joy will become embodied in action. So, yeah, good luck in February with all of this new structuring in your life. And all in all, this is a quite creative and fun time for you. So, I'm sure that you are already kind of feeling this way, like you're already maybe thinking about becoming more disciplined and almost associating or finding that you get a lot of joy from consistent habits or being healthy or whatever. And I hope that this has helped you reflect on the last 2 years. Again, good luck in February, and see you later, Scorpio. Libra rising. Saturn and Neptune are going through your sixth house. This is a house of health, daily routines, service, work habits, and how this can show up for you is your health and your stress could become very somatic and almost symbolic rather than literal. But there could be a fogginess there where you don't understand what your body is doing. You feel these somatic things, but you're also like not connected to it. It's like symbolic, and Saturn may force you to take a disciplined approach at breaking down what's going on. You may experience boundaries blur around your work and your obligations. You may experience fear of health problems like something could be wrong and you don't know what it is, and you also fear that whatever it is could be misdiagnosed. You may feel a lot of fatigue and just drained with no clarity on the cause. Um, a sense that your health is declining and becoming aware of subtle symptoms. You might experience insecurity around your ability to keep up with work and obligations, that you could experience burnout and, like feel like that makes you unreliable. You could experience being taken advantage of at work, feeling lost in a clutter of tasks, feeling like your job expectations are unclear, or that your coworkers judge or misunderstand you, or just feeling anxiety around your coworkers or your boss's judgment in general. You may feel that you're ungrounded or like your life is slipping into disorganization, that you're losing control of your routine. You may experience situations of burnout that force you to rest, or health scares that prompt you to take your health more seriously and develop habits to mitigate them. You may be forced to enforce boundaries at work, like I can't take any more work, or like we need to define what my role is in clear language, or even like you may have a coworker taking advantage of you and you have to put up boundaries with them. You may feel guilt about not being productive, but also feel overworked. But when Neptune and Saturn move into your seventh house, you're going to start to get some agency in your relationships. So you may start a new relationship or partnership, or end one, or redefine one, or multiple. You'll find that you come to understand your needs, and so you might have to express that in different ways in different partnerships. You may need to confront patterns of codependency. You may speak more truth and become less avoidant in your relationships. Learn to set healthy boundaries. A direct result from coming to understand where you overgive in relationships, where you idealize, where you avoid conflict, where boundaries dissolve between you and others. In general, you come to understand who you are in relationships and what you need. So, empowering times. Hopefully by now you are starting to accept maybe burnout, or you're starting to feel like you have organization coming back, or you are healing some blurred boundaries at work, and empowering times ahead, Libra. So good luck. And just a mention, because I didn't mention it, so Neptune and Saturn are moving into your 7th house in February. So this new phase, it will be here soon. And thank you for watching, Libra. Virgo risings. Neptune and Saturn are moving through your 7th house of Pisces. So your seventh house is your one-on-one commitments with other people, your partnerships, your relationships. Some people say the marriage house. Um, Really, it's where your equals are in a way, where you will find the people who can meet you where you are and be a proper partner. But it's also, it's also the house of contracts, right? So, um, but also open enemies. So, where the 12th house is your hidden enemies, the 7th house are people who aren't going to shy away that they're your enemies. Like, they're very open and honest about it. So, with these planets moving through your 7th house, um, you may experience some fears in your relationships and partnerships that they may fall apart. You may feel like your partners are withdrawing love or may find someone else, or that your business partner may uh, go work with someone else. You may worry about being deceived or cheated, or that your partners have hidden motives or secret feelings. Saturn could materialize this by bringing truth to the surface, or hidden dynamics in partnerships surfacing, miscommunications um, that can bring things to the surface. Attachment fears. You may worry about losing yourself in your relationships, dissolving into your partnerships, losing your identity, becoming who they want instead of who you are, not knowing where they end and you begin. You might have insecurities, like feeling like you are too much, like too much of an emotional burden, or just a burden in general, or that you're annoying, or that they could do better. You may feel a Neptunian confusion around your partners or the relationship, like confusion around the commitment or their intentions or your future with them. You may idealize them, see them with rose-colored glasses and miss red flags. Um, other things that could occur, a relationship crisis could force honesty. You may feel lonely inside the relationship or neglected. You may feel like your partner is cold or distant, or like you guys just aren't connected. An event could bring clarity to the truth of who someone is, or their flaws, or behavioral patterns, or even your own. Situations could arise that force you to enforce boundaries, like maybe your partner's behavior is hurting you in a way that you can no longer ignore. When Saturn and Neptune move into your 8th house in February, relationships will get deeper and more vulnerable. Deeper truths may be revealed, and even more honest discussions about your needs, like complete honesty. You may rebuild trust in relationships or heal sexual or emotional wounds. Relationships will become deeper and stronger, more passionate. There will be a greater emphasis on shared resources. And so I guess to summarize, in the seventh house, your boundaries will go up when Neptune and Saturn are going through. And in the eighth house, your emotional walls will come down to bring richer, deeper, merging dynamics in your relationships. So, yeah, hopefully, you have already begun enforcing some of your boundaries in your relationships, and by February, um, you know, maybe, just maybe, it'll be a really good Valentine's Day. I hope so, Virgo. And good luck in February on your new phase, and thank you for watching. Leo rising. This Neptune and Saturn are moving through your eighth house. This is the house of shared resources, intimacy, uh, your shadows and trauma, vulnerability, transformation, sex, passion. So, with Neptune and Saturn moving through this house, it likely brought up some fears related to abandonment or betrayal. You might have felt fearful that your partner was hiding something from you or might emotionally vanish, that intimacy could lead to loss, or fear that you were being manipulated or absorbed in your merging with another, that you were losing yourself in a sense. Anxiety around joint finances and or debts or taxes, or being betrayed around those things, taken advantage of financially, or fear of being financially dependent. It can bring a general sense of emotional dread and a lot of thoughts or complexes around death and decay. You could have felt hypersensitive to other people's emotions to the point of burnout, even. You could have felt haunted by old trauma or memories. Saturn can materialize some of these fears and anxieties by bringing into form situations like your partner sharing a fear that they had kept hidden for a long time. That could make you feel like, oh my gosh, what else could I be in the dark on? You could have your boundaries violated. A situation could arise where you have to restructure your joint finances, or you realize your partner isn't pulling their weight financially. Those old wounds, attachment wounds, abandonment wounds, wounds from betrayals in the past could resurface and cause you to go back into therapy or just do a lot of emotional labor You could have dreams that reveal some dark and hidden things, your shadowy side. When Saturn and Neptune move into your ninth house, you may experience a radical shift in your beliefs, a foundational upending and restructuring in your spiritual or religious frameworks, and feel that you just see life through a sharper and more awakened lens. You might encounter spiritual teachings or teachers and feel a breakthrough in meaning or purpose in your life. You could travel or become more interested in psychology or metaphysics or spirituality. The eighth house transforms you, and the ninth house brings sovereignty and a more defined self and clearer purpose. So, yeah, in very deep times for you right now, Leo risings. Um, I imagine that by now you have already begun to um, heal a lot of those eighth house fears, and you can probably already see some of these ninth house themes emerging, and you're in the middle of that transition. I wish you the best luck in your next chapter. Thanks for watching, Leo. Cancer risings. I have a lot of Cancer risings in my life. Um, Saturn and Neptune are transiting through your ninth house of Pisces. I don't know whether Cancer risings are innately spiritually rebellious, or whether it is these transits. I look forward to uh, kind of seeing how Cancer risings approach spirituality here in the next few years. But the ninth house is your house of higher learning, philosophy, belief systems, spirituality, long distance travel, exploration. It seems like, in general, this transit is a loss of hope or a loss of purpose. So you may have felt the past couple of years like lost and directionless in your life and your spirituality, uncertain about your purpose, feeling adrift. You might have had fears that your worldview or beliefs are wrong, or a fear of spiritual teachers or teachings misguiding you, and just a general sense of such cloudiness and confusion there that you didn't want to make any sure judgments or concrete, like have these concrete spiritual beliefs. You may worry about misunderstanding moral or philosophical truths, that you may miss the truth or are intellectually inadequate to understand them. You may feel trapped in your beliefs. Saturn can materialize this by bringing situations where you realize a spiritual teacher or ideology you once believed in is flawed, or are faced with a situation where you have to make moral or ethical decisions while you're confused. You may have had to make a decision related to higher education. You may feel this desire to connect with the higher truths, but confusion, or like there are a lot of mixed spiritual messages. When Saturn and Neptune move into your 10th house, a new public facing career or legacy may emerge or change direction. Something more aligned with purpose or something more meaningful. You may gain clarity in how you're seen by the public or people in general, and face responsibility for public actions or decisions. You may develop accountability in leadership roles. You may find that fears of inadequacy in your career or image may cause you to develop a plan to turn uncertainty into structure and to present yourself the way that you want clearly. The beliefs, ideals, and purpose that came out of the 9th house transits will be applied to your work, leadership, or how you approach responsibility. So by now, hopefully, you are starting to feel like you're aligning with your spirituality or your purpose, or you can at least feel like you're starting to get back to those things, and you're starting to feel that optimism again and that hope. And I wish you the best luck in your next phase of life. Thank you for watching, Cancer Risings. Gemini Risings. Neptune and Saturn are moving through your 10th house. This is the house of career, authority, your public image, public visibility, your reputation, your long-term goals, your legacy. So when Neptune and Saturn move through this house, you may feel like there's a dissolving of your old ambitions. You may question the career that you've built your identity on, or your legacy, or kind of question whether the way that you're seen is the way that you want to be seen. There could be a sense that the ladder you're climbing is made of fog. You may experience fears of failure, of being seen, but also of being invisible. You may long for meaningful work, but feel like you don't have a clear path on how to get there or what that might look like. You could worry that your reputation is slipping, or that others are projecting things onto you. You could feel that people see through you, see all of your flaws, or misunderstand you, or people project onto you, right? Like they read into you what they want. You could experience burnout from carrying authority roles that you never asked for. Um, and just feel a sense that you can't fake your purpose anymore. You might feel haunted by career dreams that you abandoned or ambitions that you abandoned. You could feel trapped in a role that no longer aligns with your spirit. You could face external pressure like bosses tightening expectations or the collapse of something that you relied on professionally. Saturn can come along and materialize some of these things. You might run into situations where um, there's a boundary issue with a superior or a loss of structure at work, or you could be called to take responsibility for something that you avoided. Um, just an event that causes a slow, serious rethinking and rebuilding of your public path. But when Saturn and Neptune move into your 11th house in Aries, you may find a new community, new allies, a new dream for your future that's sharper and bolder and clearer. Um, Aries could really ignite a fire in your vision for your future. The fog around your career clears by revealing the people who will walk that road with you. You may enter a group, collective, online space, or friendship circle that accelerates your path. You may find that your purpose becomes more autonomous, more sovereign, more aligned with your authenticity. And you could feel a strong push to lead or innovate within these new communities or just in general. The 10th house dissolves the meaning devoid ambitions in your life, and the transit through the 11th house will bring a new mission and tribe to support it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, this is one of the, well, it isn't always, but if your MC is there, your midhaven, this is pretty structural in your life, your legacy, your career, your ambitions. So this is kind of a hard and heavy one, but hopefully by now you can feel the transition, and you may already know just from hearing this what communities or people I could be talking about, and hopefully some of that career pressure has eased for you, and you're starting to maybe see some possibilities opening up for you. I appreciate you watching. I wish you luck in your next phase of life. Thanks so much for watching, Gemini. Taurus risings. Pisces and Neptune are transiting your 11th house. This is the house of friends, community, the collective, utopian ideals, progression, hopes for the future. When Neptune and Saturn pass through this house, you may experience confusion around friendships or belonging, feeling misunderstood in your social circles, a dissolving of old friend groups or long-term goals, a sense of disillusionment with communities or dreams that once inspired you, a loss of faith in the idea of utopia, or just confused around the idea in general, or like you want to imagine a utopia and it's just blurry and cloudy and you can't. Fear of being excluded, ignored, or betrayed by your community or friends. Sensitivity to collective emotions, online spaces, or social pressure. You may feel like there are blurred boundaries between you and your friendships, or a realization that you're giving more than you receive, or that you're the emotional anchor for others and it's draining you, burning you out. A dream that you carried for years may begin to feel impossible or like it's slipping away. Saturn can materialize some of these things by situations arising, like a friend revealing a hard truth or crossing a boundary, a community or friendship group could destabilize and collapse. You may find your responsibilities in a community increasing, and you may feel like you need to take your dreams more seriously or start pruning them. At the end of the day, what this can mean is that by the end of it, you may find that your friendships are purged and friends that never aligned with the real you fall away, or you may find that you don't align with certain communities anymore or certain goals or dreams. And you may detach from outdated future visions. When Saturn and Neptune move through your 12th house in Aries, you may experience a burning clarity of something previously hidden in your subconscious. There could be a spiritual awakening that feels raw and piercing. A confrontation with your inner fire or part of yourself that you've been suppressing, because Aries is our authentic self. Old unconscious fears could surface and be burned away. You may retreat temporarily to rebuild yourself internally, the 12th house is quite a cocoon stage. This is the beginning of a major karmic closing of a cycle. Your subconscious will become sharper, more active, more honest. You may see exactly what's been draining you spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. It's a time of working through a lot of subconscious things and isolation and becoming more in tune with symbol and dreams and the mystical sides of life. And from there is a rebuilding of your life. So, you are going through some of these crises with long-term goals and utopian ideals and to a certain extent like community identity and who you want to align yourself with. And the 12th house will probably cause a lot more thought there and digging deep to bring out the real authenticity inside of you and what you really want in life and who you really want to associate with. So, in the end, it will be such a beautiful thing. You will be so authentic and aligned. So, I wish you the best luck in your next phase in life. Thank you for watching Taurus Rising. Aries risings. Neptune and Saturn are moving through your 12th house. This is the house of karma, the subconscious, the house of self-undoing, of dreams, mystical spirituality, of isolation, spiritual renewal. This is maybe the hardest of all 12 because this is really, it can just feel like a total death of self. So in the past couple of years, you may have felt a fear of facing your subconscious, of loss, endings, of letting go. anxiety around life's hidden currents or unseen consequence, just a fear that something's going to catch up to you or that you're going to accidentally do something wrong that's detrimental to your life. A fear of repeating past mistakes, fear of abandonment, feeling lonely, unsupported, or spiritually adrift, feeling unworthy of higher understanding, a dissolving of your identity's foundation without knowing what comes after, a sense that you're shedding a skin that you've worn for lifetimes, feeling hypersensitive to energy, signs, dreams, memories, other people's emotions, feeling a heightened sense of empathy, feeling grief without a source, and a general sense of exhaustion. You might feel invisible or like you're disappearing from your old roles. Saturn can materialize some of these fears by bringing situations that require you to take solitude, like an emotional or spiritual crisis, or you might find your health or energy is depleting and it highlights a need for boundaries or self-care. You may be forced to face the truth of what you've been avoiding emotionally with things coming up from your subconscious. You may experience situations come up that force you to let go of unhealthy attachments, illusions, relationships, and just might find that you are challenged to face your fears or karma without any external distractions. So, a very hard, just complete dissolving time. The old self dissolves, but when Neptune and Saturn move into Aries in your first house, oh my gosh, you are going to have a complete rebirth. And I am so excited for you. Your old fears, illusions, and karmic patterns are going to be released. You're going to emerge with a clearer sense of self and a fire because it's Aries, an authentic fire. Just a sense of confidence and initiative being renewed in your life. A new approach to life, a greater sense of self-awareness. I don't know if I already mentioned it, but authenticity. You know, you're not gonna be questioning everything like you were when these planets were moving through your 12th house. Not to say that, you know, when Saturn moves out of that house in 2.5 years, you know, Neptune couldn't bring some fuzzy or fogginess back a little bit, but really, no, it's gonna be a lot better. You're gonna embody the spiritual, philosophical, and psychological insights from the previous transit. Find yourself moving forward in life with clarity and personal power, and those vague visions or dreams that you had before, they're going to be clearer, and you're going to be acting and taking initiative on them. Um, so, yeah, this is February, okay, Aries risings? Um, and maybe you already feel the transition happening, you know? Maybe you feel like you've resolved a lot of those subconscious insecurities and fears and moved through a lot of that karma, and you can feel the transition happening, and like you are already starting to get some of your clarity back and some of that fire returning to you. um, I wish you the best luck in your next phase of life. Very excited for you. Um, I know that this could not have been an easy time. Thanks for watching, Aries. Alright, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and it brought some good reflection and makes you feel prepared for the next phase. Um, if you're interested, check out some of the other videos on my channel. Um, they're about the Enneads by Plotinus, so it's kind of different. I do plan on making more astrological videos, and if you're interested, also, I have done a few presentations on the occult rejects. The most recent one was called the 12 Labors of Hercules, and in that we talk about the subconscious and the north and south node and eclipses, and it's wholly interesting. So definitely check that out if that sounds like it would be interesting for you. And again, thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.